Welcome to the First On Scene podcast from the Law Enforcement Death Response Team. Join us as we explore the experiences of first responders and their families. We will discuss some of the obstacles they face throughout their career and beyond, along with ways to stay healthy during and well after retirement. This podcast will provide resources for first responders and will share real-life stories to inspire and show the heroic strength we all have and can build on.
Hello, I'm Paul Butler. I'm a former chief of police at a small department in South Carolina and a retired chief deputy of a larger agency right there in Horry County, South Carolina. This podcast is brought to you by GoLawEnforcement.com. If you're looking to recruit highly qualified candidates for your agency, or you're looking for a job in law enforcement, GoLawEnforcement.com has one of the largest and most popular listings of all law enforcement job openings across the nation. This podcast is presented by the Law Enforcement Death Response Team, or LEADER team. I've worked with them, these highly trained, highly qualified, and highly involved professionals. Work very hard on some of the most sensitive cases to help law enforcement with the task at hand and them with the struggles that often come afterward. I want you to know that Tell City, Indiana Police Sergeant Heather Glenn, 47 years of age, was shot and killed while attempting to arrest a domestic violence suspect at Perry County Memorial Hospital on the morning of Monday, July 3rd, 2023. Just 48 hours earlier, I was in Tell City with my business as a training instructor to work with Sergeant Glenn and the Tell City Police Department, and we had a community event where they turned out as professionals, as spouses, had their children with them, and we had one of the greatest days of training ever. I want you to know that 48 hours later, my world was turned upside down when I received a call from a dispatcher, Tracy, who let me know that Heather Glenn had been shot and killed in the line of duty. But you need to also know that a lot of worlds were turned upside down that day. And right now, we are blessed to have with us Sergeant Glenn's father, retired Sheriff Bob Glenn, and her mother, Miss Jayne Glenn, who still works at the sheriff's office there, her brother Jason Glenn, and Brianne Lawalin, the wife of Tell City Police Chief Derek Lawalin. They all had to go through this tragedy together, and they've kept me close and kept me included. And now I'd like you to hear how these events have unfolded from their perspectives.
I'm Bob Glenn, Heather Glenn's father. I spent 8 years as the elected sheriff of the county and 24 years working for Tell City before I retired to go for sheriff. She started out, she wanted to be a teacher. But at that particular point in time, there were so many teachers that you couldn't get a job. So I never did say it, but I'm sure it probably had an influence on her that Dad was a law enforcement officer, and she grew up with it. She went to Benson University under criminal law. She's 3.9 grade point average. She worked at Kimball's, which was a wood factory. Her mother worked there and her brother. And she would go in to work. She would take a different set of clothes with her, and she'd work the day. And then at that evening, she would go into the restrooms there and change and put her other clothes on and go on to school. Then she worked as a deputy to begin with. And then she come to Tell City. She hired in as a patrolman. I was sergeant at that time. Me and her were both working at that time, maybe 6 months to a year. I said that this department ain't big enough for both of us. One of us got to go. And then I ran for sheriff and got elected. Yeah, that worked out real great for her. I left and she continued on. She became a sergeant. I was watching television in the basement, and my wife was upstairs in bed, and the doorbell rang at about 1 o'clock in the morning. I went to the door. I was greeted by the sheriff the assistant chief and the lieutenant of the police department. And I knew automatically at 1 o'clock in the morning, you don't expect to see those three people standing at your front door. Basically, what first went through my mind was maybe she'd been involved in an accident or something had happened, and they were there to notify us so we could go do whatever we had to do. And unfortunately, I was advised that she had been involved in a shooting incident, and she didn't make it. The next hardest thing I had to do in my life was go tell my wife. My wife didn't even want to come out of the bedroom. I mean, she said, if I don't come out, then I won't have to hear it. It probably won't be true. And I said, no, reality's here. We have to face it. So we were taken by the officers after giving some time to get dressed and everything appropriately, and we were taken to the hospital. When we arrived out there, we were under an understanding we was going to get to see her daughter, but they put us in a room and told us no. And I said, well, if we're not going to be able to go in right away, then I'm going back outside. I'm not going to be kept in a room like a caged animal. So we went outside, and we were advised that the Indiana State Police were taking over the investigation. An officer I'd worked with years ago come out and talked to me, and he advised me that it was a crime scene now. They were working it and didn't want us in there. Well, I think what he wouldn't tell us was we didn't need to see what had happened, basically. So we proceeded to wait there until that was from somewhere after 1 till 3 something in the morning. And we went over to church, and we sat there for a couple hours. The minister opened up church, and we had friends and family and different ones come in. And the next thing, we were advised they were moving her from the hospital down to the coroner's office. So we went back to the hospital, and they brought her out, put her in a coroner's vehicle, and they drove her down to the armory where he has his office. And they brought her out and took her in through the lines of people. And she was in a body bag. At that time, we couldn't see her daughter. We didn't get to see her until the following Saturday. It was a shock when it first happened, but now we've realized that there's way more to it than just her passing. We've got to carry on, and we've got her house and all her stuff. Different organizations that are wanting us to go to meetings and wanting us to do stuff. That pretty much kept us occupied, but we have our moments. The police department's been a godsend for us. Dispatchers, law enforcement officers, all of them. Anything we needed, we were basically, they were there to do or assist with us. They've taken us different places to different events. You know, the whole thing, the whole community's been supportive. The first night that it happened, they had a candlelight vigil in City Hall, and over 2,000 people showed up. Well, I think for me, time has been the biggest thing I can say is on my side, really. I've adjusted to the fact now that my daughter's no longer here. That doesn't mean I can't be sad and grieved because she's not here anymore and nothing we can do about that. So as time goes on, I get better with it. Well, I think one of the first things that hurt was so many things happened so fast after it happened that we didn't have time to even to think about it. And after things calmed down, then's when reality set in. But it's our duty as parents to do our best to see that she left a legacy. We've started a $1,000 a year Sergeant Heather Glenn Scholarship Fund, which will promote females into law enforcement. And if we don't have any females that are interested in it, then it will allow a male. We also sent money to the animal shelter. Heather was a big believer in rescuing animals. She had animals everywhere. I'll be the first to tell you. She had a little dog. It had jaw was messed up that she called Wiener. And then she had 4 or 5 cats. and every one of them started with an M. Heather was 47 years old. She turned 47 on June the 9th and was killed July the 3rd. Heather was so wonderful and done so much for everybody else and wouldn't hesitate a moment to do something for someone if they needed it. A little lady come to us and said, "Are you Heather's mom?" Dad said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, you don't know it, but my granddaughter was playing softball. She went down. She had heart problem and said, your daughter was the only one that would come over and done CPR on her and kept her alive
Until they could get her to the hospital.
Makes me feel great."
My name is Jayne Glenn. I am Heather Glenn's mother. I was in bed and my husband heard the knock at the door. I didn't think nothing of it, but there was a lot of voices in the living room and they were talking. I heard my husband say, "Oh no." And in all honesty, I did not dream that it would be Heather because I always worried about my son and he was out bow fishing that night. I had a feeling something was wrong. I wasn't sure, so I wouldn't come out of the bedroom. I'm like, okay, I'm not coming out. I don't want to hear what happened. So the sheriff come into my bedroom, put his arms around me, and took me out there to talk to the rest of them. And I couldn't believe it was Heather because I never feared for her life. She would always do the right thing. And from what I understand, she did the right thing, but the right thing is what took her life. Because she did not know that he was carrying a handgun. So she used a taser from what I hear, and then the handgun showed up. I love it when people talk to me about Heather and tell me some of the good things that she's done. It heals my heart. Makes me feel like I'm getting closer to her, even though she's gone, because she never elaborated everything that she did for the community to help people, to us. She just did it because that's just how she was. She just loved helping people. And hearing the stories from people comforts me a lot. And I love talking about my daughter. She was a wonderful person. And it's just hard to believe she's gone. I look out my kitchen window and I used to be able to see her house was real close to mine and I could see her drive through the intersection. And now I don't see that anymore. So that hurts. But I'm working through it. Pray to the Lord, the good Lord, to help you get through this, which I do that. I believe in God very much. He's a big support. Keep your friends close to you. They will help you get through this. Don't shove anybody away. You'll know who your true friends are. They will be right there with you. And I have found out that I have a lot more friends than what I thought I had through this. Heather had a love for people and animals. She was a big animal lover. She rescued them. The biggest one that she loved very much was the cat named Grace. That cat had an Instagram account, and she had over 3,000 followers. But as Heather said, she rescued the cat because these people had mistreated it, and she got them to surrender the cat to her. Heather was in a low point in her life, and she rescued Gracie, and the vet didn't think Grace would live. And Heather said, if this cat can survive, I can survive. And she was going to name her something besides Grace, but she said Grace was a name for her because she saved her, and Grace was a fighter, and she saved herself. She was her three-legged cat. And unfortunately, that cat passed away in January, and it broke her heart. Grace was cremated, and it was in her end of watch papers. She wanted Grace's ashes with her. So we got Grace's ashes in the coffin with her. Derek Lawalin is the chief of police here. Derek gave all the officers a paper to fill out. It's called the end of watch papers. And they hunted and found Heather's because he had gave it to him not too long ago. And Heather had hers partially filled out. Even though she did not have a will, we knew some of her wishes. We read them and we're trying to do everything that she wanted, and that was one request. Grace was to go in the coffin with her. Trace, my grandson, her nephew, he was a pallbearer. He got her 2001 yellow Corvette. Now, he won't be 16 until March, so he's going to be a 16-year-old with a Corvette that he's not going to be able to drive because his dad done told him he's not driving it every day. Her headstone had to be black. We're working on that right now. It's going to be in the shape of a badge, and we got to put Gracie's picture on there, and we got to put Major on there. Major was her German Shepherd, and he passed away. Major was cremated. So we sneak up there in the middle of the night, and he's buried with her. We put the box and his collar and everything in a hole on top of her. So his picture is going on the headstone also. And I think she would be very happy that we put him up there with her.
I'm Jayne Glenn. I'm 45, a resident of Tell City, Indiana, the brother of Sergeant Heather Glenn. Heather was my older sister, yes, and my only sibling. When it first happened, I got a phone call from the department, and I guess it caught me off guard at first. Like, they just said that there had been an officer-involved shooting. The thought of death never came to my mind because I grew up in law enforcement family and we'd never experienced anything like that. So I just thought maybe my sister had been injured. I didn't really know what to expect at first. So I wasn't at home. I was an hour away from being able to get to my parents or to my sister. So it made me feel it was something prepared for 44 years to hopefully never hear, because I'd been involved in it my whole life. And your heart sinks as when you get a call saying someone's been in a shooting, even if it wasn't my sister. If they said that there was an officer-involved shooting, I feel like they're family to me, or I've known everybody down here my whole life. I don't know. It's hard to describe. It just happens fast, and you don't know. I don't know. You feel anxious. You feel overwhelmed at first. That's the feeling I had when it all occurred. I learned of it being away from the town, an hour away. As I was getting to town, I come to a crossroad in the highway, and I knew our medical facility here, if it were bad enough, they would life flight her. And I knew if I needed to go to Louisville, I needed to turn right. And if I needed to go to Evansville, I needed to turn left. So I called my dad, and I just asked him, I said, do I need to come there, or do I need to head to Louisville or Evansville? He said, no, you need to come here. And when he said that, I knew it was the worst possible outcome for the situation, because they wouldn't have kept her there. They don't have the means of that at our facility. Yeah, that was tough. I was 15 minutes away, and I just knew. And then see all the lights, and of course the helicopter was sitting there. That's just how I found out. Just read between the lines. I took care of my sister's house and made sure her animals were cared for and got that lined out, because you can't sleep. And when that happens, you stay busy and you stay focused and try to keep your mind off stuff. I didn't want my parents to be burdened with that, because I knew they had things they had to get done. They were being overwhelmed with people stopping and talking with them, and just they couldn't get any time to themselves to sit down and physically grieve. Friends reaching out and helping me at times, even with that, and even people keeping the animals and her friends. That made me feel good that the community could come together and really support me and my family, and when all this happened. So that's where I was with that. I just stay busy and let certain friends in. Of course, you're vulnerable at that time too. You got to be careful with who's approaching you and the help they're offering, how close you want to let people get in that time. I think what's helping me as time passes is trying to make sure people or still know what kind of person she was, the officer she was, the legacy she left behind. I know that she won't, in our time, be forgotten, but I just want people to know, and I know they respect her, even the people she would arrest. She had a witty way of making them laugh while she was handcuffing them. And that was the type of person she was. I don't want people to forget that. So, relationship my son had with my sister, he was 15 and definitely the favorite. He might as well have been hers. She took him to his first concert. I think it was Stained. No 6-year-old probably should have been at, but they were thick as thieves. He's been to all kinds of concerts with her. I think he's seen Godsmack, Stained, Disturbed. They enjoyed mowing grass together, camping out in the backyard together. She started mowing grass, as many officers do with their scheduling and stuff. They have time to pick up extra money here and there. And she started it, I think we're 12, 14 years old when we started mowing, like any kid, making money, trying to buy things for yourself. And she just always continued it. And as he got older, she was very particular. The lines had to be right in the yard. My son would be 10 years old and she'd be out there. You make sure you do it right and make him mow it twice. And he's done that, and she paid him very well. Of course, she didn't care if she made any money off of it. She'd give him the money and take him to Walmart or Party City or Five Below or any store he wanted to go to and say, it's your money, you spend it how you want. Where she lives in this community and where he lives in this community and where my parents and myself, she's between us. From the time he got to be able to ride a bike and we felt secure letting him ride in the streets, he would stop at her house on the way to my house or his grandparents' house, and that was a hot spot for him. So she got to spend a lot of time with him and show him a lot of value-added things that kids should know. Maybe not at 10, but he's matured a lot since July. He really has. I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see it, that it's happened. I hate that it had to, what happened for him to, I don't know if it's driving him, but he's matured a lot. He really has. He's always been the quiet kid, but he's starting to come out of a shell. He's in the gym every day. He's at the gym right now. He'll have baseball practice for 2 hours. He'll go straight to the gym for 3 hours. He's dedicated to that now. Like, he's lost 23 pounds. The loss of his aunt, he's staying motivated now more than I've ever seen him stay motivated with things like the mowing grass, and he's got one of her cats. It's almost like he doesn't want to let her down. He's working out every day. It's amazing. He's just becoming a man. He's going to be 16, and he tells me all the time, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm like, well, you're always my kid, so there's no way I can look at it any different. But I'm not 3. I'm like, well, I get it, son. I'm still going to try to offer some guidance to you, the best way I can. I feel like she wanted him to be prepared for the real world. She was always real with him and told him, don't do drugs, as any cop should do. And there's always somebody watching. She'd always tell him, I know everything about what you do. If it happens, I know about it. I still feel like he knows that all these officers know him. And if he's getting out of line, that she's going to come down on him still, no matter if she's here physically, but she's here and still watches over him. Me and Heather's age gap is 2 years and 4 months, I believe. And she was always 10 years more mature than me. And of course, the boy-girl thing, she was the smart one in school. And I was the one that never wanted to go to school. And she was always home reading books. And I was always trying to find a way out of the house to go hang out with friends. We hung out so much as kids growing up. Outside, that's what we did, running and playing basketball. She always beat me in basketball. She always beat me in tennis as kids and could never get ahead of her. Always behind and always in trouble, and she was always good. I just remember stories forever, and you don't think of them daily till you get asked about your age difference. Just brings up her hitting me with a softball bat when I was 10 years old because she got a grass stain on her pants. My sister always worked night shift. And I've been on night shift for 21 years at my job. So she was always somebody I could call. It didn't matter if it was a a weekday or a weeknight or a weekend, or I knew that at 3:00 in the morning, if the Academy was running a special on a Glock, I could text my sister or call her and say, "Hey, did you see Academy just emailed this deal on this pistol?" And she would be there to answer the call. And 20 something years, you rely on making that phone call. And now I can't.
My name is Brianne Lawalin. I am the wife of Chief Derek Lawalin. Every summer we have a 4th of July party for our family, and that's what we were doing the night of the 2nd. Heather is usually on duty and stops by to chat and have dinner with us. That night was no different, and actually, as she was pulling up to our house, the community college that is in the back of our house had an alarm going off because of our guys shooting fireworks off. So she had to go clear the building, and then she came back over and had dinner with us. She was talking with the kids. We had made plans to go kayaking later in the summer. As she was leaving, she told our then 7-year-old son, "Be nice to your mama." And then they gave each other a little salute as she was getting in her car. So later, we'd been asleep for maybe about an hour when Derek got the phone call. He jumped out of bed and ran down to the basement where all his gear is. I followed him, knowing something was serious. The only thing he said were shots fired at the hospital. But about that time, Heather's body-worn camera was sending a notification to Derek's phone. And the alert isn't something that happens frequently. Like, he doesn't get those alerts frequently, but it's not that uncommon either. I tried to stay hopeful and positive that it was just a camera error, like happens sometimes due to the different positionings of the cameras. Derek was out the door like within 90 seconds of that phone call. I went back up to bed. I sat there and prayed for about 20 minutes before I texted Derek and I asked if Heather was okay. And he replied, no. I quickly got up and threw some clothes on and started heading towards the hospital. It's only about a mile from our house. And when I was about halfway there, he called me and said she was gone. I'll never forget pulling up at the hospital and it being pitch black in the middle of the night. And there were so many police cars there. And all of the light bars were on, and just seeing all the red and blue flashing lights. I got out of my car and started walking towards the ER, but I knew I did not want to see anything that was going on that was going to stay with me and haunt me. An officer met me and comforted me, and something that he said made me realize that they hadn't been informed by supervisors that she did not survive the injuries. A little later, another officer came and took me around to the side entrance of the ER, where I went and saw Derek. He had me sit in one of the empty ER rooms, and later Bob and Jayne came in there, Heather's mom and dad. After that is a blur of more officers and spouses and community members showing up, just trying to talk with people about what happened and process. And it was unbelievable that something like this had happened in little old Tell City, as Paul Butler would say. Derek used to show me the officer down page long ago before I told him I didn't want to see it anymore because it was just too depressing to hear that all the time. It was unimaginable to me that we would have an officer that would now be on that page. I would say that outpouring of love and support from the community and surrounding agencies has just been tremendous. The way that the memorial team came in and planned every detail of the funeral, beautiful. Seeing people line the roads from the high school to the cemetery felt comforting to know how much everyone loved her and wanted to be there to honor her. I recently finished going through 2 huge binders that our record coordinator put together with all of the condolence cards and correspondence after the incident. There were cards from over 40 states and 3 countries that we've received. It just shows me that we're not alone, and so many people are thinking of our agency and community and praying for us, and that feels good. The person that I guess I saw the most was Mr. Joe Hamer with the FOP. Him and his dog were here, but there were a lot of people in and out and just doing what they do. I don't even know. It's a lot of planning, and I just know that they did it all, and Derek didn't have to do much, and that meant a lot. I knew Heather all my life because she grew up down the street from my cousins and was good friends with my cousins, so I would hear Heather's stories a lot. Derek worked night shift with her for years, so she was around a lot. Our kids knew her. She was always there for us if we needed anything. Most recently, she had helped Derek build our son a treehouse out at our land. We talk about Heather a lot. There were certain things that she would say. We can still hear her saying them. I can hear her say, "Hey, Cruiser." My son's name is Cruz, and she would call him Cruiser. When I was at the hospital with everyone all night long, into the early morning hours, I was thinking, how in the world am I going to tell my kids what just happened? And just looking for guidance from people who were good with words and who would know exactly what to say. My oldest, who was 15 at the time, was leaving early that morning for Disney with her cousin, and I'm going to have to wake her up early. And so I told her, and she was really upset and couldn't believe it. And then I waited for the other two kiddos to get up. And when I knew they were up, I told them separately, because you tell a 7-year-old something different than you tell a 13-year-old. It's still been so busy that we've talked a lot about it and processed through it, but I still don't know that it's even hit us. It just seems unbelievable still.
I hope you've learned a lot from my friends in Tell City. One of the messages that we need to all remember is that tragedy can strike at any time. But true leaders step up during tragic moments. They give us hope for tomorrow, and they give us strength to face the future. The Glenn family, the Lawalin family, and my family all wish you the absolute best. Stay safe out there and take care of one another.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the First On Scene podcast from the Law Enforcement Death Response Team. If you did, please subscribe. Also, check out the listings of law enforcement job openings on golawenforcement.com. Thanks for listening.